Homelessness, for some, is just the absence of a roof. But here along España, Noval, and Lacson, it's the result of poverty, disaster, and a system that leaves thousands behind. Over 12,000 of people in Metro Manila are officially homeless, and millions are more at risk. Behind each number is a story of struggle, survival, and resilience.
Our study begins here, not with data, but with people. People who, despite having no permanent shelter, continue to create meaning, build relationships, and define what home truly is.
Homelessness is often seen as a physical condition, the lack of a house. But what if we ask, how do people without homes define home? What meaning do they give to the places they stay and the lives they live?
We listen to how people adapt, survive, and construct identity in the most uncertain conditions. Because behind every makeshift shelter, there is a person creating meaning, a certain dignity, and shaping a sense of home, even when the world calls them homeless.
To guide this study, we use two key lenses, practice theory and emplacement. Practice theory focuses on the daily routines and actions that help people build identity and familiarity. Things like marking their space, establishing habits, and forming connections with others nearby. For those without permanent shelter, these practices create a sense of structure and stability, even in the most unstable environments. On the other hand, emplacement helps us understand how people are not just in a place, but truly connected to it, physically, socially, and emotionally. Even in uncertainty, they adapt, form bonds, and create a sense of belonging. Through these lenses, we explore how the homeless in España navigate their environments, construct meaning, and ultimately redefine home.
Home is often imagined as a place, four walls, a roof, and a permanent address. But those who dwell in between spaces of the city, home becomes something else entirely. It is redefined through memory, routine, and the simple act of claiming space in a world that constantly pushes them aside. Yet even as a shelter fades, culture does not. On the sidewalks and in the shadows, everyday practices persist: cooking, sharing, and caring. The rhythms of bayanihan and damayan echoes in these routines, proving that tradition survives even in the absence of stability.
Still, the street is not untouched by power. City polices, government programs, and institutional aid shape the contours of daily life, sometimes helping, often controlling. In this landscape of bureaucracy and beautification, the homeless navigate, adapt, and quietly push back, crafting their own forms of agency. Amid all this, dignity is not lost. It is stitched into the details. A clean blanket, a morning ritual, a shared joke between neighbors. Life continues, not just as survival, but as a declaration of humanity in its most unguarded form. And in the heart of the city, resistance takes shape, not through protest signs, but through presence. Every corner claimed, every bench turned into a place of rest. It's a refusal to disappear. In these contested spaces, the homeless don't just endure, they fight to belong.
This is not a story told through numbers. It is a story drawn from voices, heard on street corners, whispered under overpasses, and shared over quiet moments of trust. In the heart of Manila, we walked not just to observe, but to listen. We sought not just answers, but stories told by those who lived without a fixed address, yet carry with them an unshakable sense of place. We began with care. Consent was not just a formality, it was a commitment. Each person we approached was given the choice to speak, to decline, to be seen, or to stay unnamed. Respect and safety came first, always. Our approach was deeply human qualitative design. We did not count heads, we traced lives. Through in-depth interviews and slow observation, we immerse ourselves in the everyday, how people sleep, survive, relate, and define what home means when the city doesn't offer one. This is not just a research. It is a shared experience, a brief crossing of lives and truths. And in those crossings, we found meaning far deeper than any question we came with.
In Araling Panlipunan, we learn about history, identity, and nationhood. But these stories, told from the sidewalks of Manila, bring those lessons to life. They show us that society is not built only in government halls or history books, but in the quiet courage of those who live at the margins. Faith, community, and pakikipagkapwa-tao are not just values. They are cultural lifelines. They sustain dignity where the system fails, and nurture solidarity where policy cannot reach. These are the living foundation of our culture, passed through actions, not just traditions. For educators and learners alike, this research invites us to go beyond the textbook. It calls us social studies to be space of understanding, of empathy, civic engagement, and social awareness. To ask, how do we build a more inclusive society? Who gets to be heard? And how do we make space for those who are not? By listening to those who redefine home under tarpaulin roofs and busy sidewalks, we begin to understand the real meaning of bayanihan, a society that lifts each other even in silence. And in doing so, we turn knowledge into actions, and learning into pananagutan, a shared responsibility for justice, equity, and belonging. This is Araling Panlipunan, as it should be, grounded, compassionate, and transformative.
We walked the edges of the university, around España, through Noval, and along Lacson. Streets we often pass but rarely pause to see. There, we met people whose lives unfold just steps away from our classrooms. Not just those without homes, but those building a life from what little they have. Some were pushing carts, some selling snacks, others simply resting after a long day of labor. They are not just residents of the street, they are part of the city's lifeblood. These encounters became the heart of our study. What follows are the stories, reflections, and rhythms of those who have redefined what it means to live, to belong, and to call a place home. This is where the conversation begins. Along the busy stretch of España, we met Nanay Bet, 52 years old, with frail steps and slurred speech. She sits quietly by the sidewalk, her palm extended not in shame but in survival. Each coin she receives is not just spare change, it is breakfast, water, a night's rest under the open sky. Not far away, on the side of Lacson, we met someone with a similar fate, Tatay Ray. He cannot speak, but his eyes carry years of unspoken stories. With quiet determination, he introduced himself to us through gestures and presence, reminding us that dignity does not need words. Now 55, Tatay Ray has roamed Lacson since childhood. No fixed address, no familiar door to return to. Only this city and the pavement that has known his footsteps longer than anyone else has.
Deeper into Lacson, we met Tatay Ruhilio, 48 years old. Once a man with a stable life, his world shifted overnight when he was robbed of everything he owned. Now, he walks the streets collecting scrap, resting where the night finds him.
Ganito po pinatutulog. Apo. Ninakaw po. Opo. Ninakaw.
Behind that quiet voice is a deeper loss. He once had a family, a wife, their children. But distance and circumstance tore them apart.
Hiwalay na po tayo. Opo.
May anak.
Okay po.
Tatlo po.
Ito.
If he could have a home again, his dream is simple.
Yung may ano po tayo. Tayo. Opo.
Yet even that peace feels far. When asked about government help, his answer was clear. There has been none. Just a few streets away, a small tricycle has become the home of Ate Margarita. 37 years old, she left Quezon City with her 5 children in search of something more stable, but found only a sliver of space to claim as her own, with no affordable housing available and no space left to rent. For over a year now, this tricycle has been her refuge. Each morning, she and her husband drive passengers for a living. But when the sun sets, the road becomes their shelter.
Parang isang komportable ka kasi kapag meron kang sariling bahay. May matutulugan ka, panatag yung loob mo kasi hindi ka sa kalsada na natutulog.
Like Tatay Rogelio, she too lives without assistance. No programs, no outreach, no safety net. Just the will to endure day after day.
While many are forced into life on the streets by circumstance, there are those whose stories are more complex-rooted in personal choice, survival, and the fear of solitude. Among them is Nanay Ling De Ala, 61 years old, who has been living along the streets near Laong-Laan for the past 4 years. Unlike others, she wasn't driven to the streets by a single disaster. She chose this path because for her, the street offered something that a house could not: company, familiarity, and visibility.
Dahil malapit lang ang Laon-Laan. Piding-piding, nangyari sa piding-piding.
Sa piding.
Nagkakakilala ang mga nagpiding-piding. So, ayun. Pag nakita ko yung kasama ko doon sa Baklaran, tapos dumadaan dito, na nagchika-chika din kami.
It was during these moments of care from the sisters that her name was entered into raffle for housing program. And to her surprise, she won. A townhouse in Batangas, fully provided through a charitable outreach. But when the time came to move in, she refused. Not out of ungratefulness, but fear. Fear of living in an empty house. Fear of what might happen if something went wrong and no one was around to help.
Nagbigay ng feeding, mga madre yun. So, nilista ang ano namin. Pinagbubola, ang lumabas ang akin. So, hindi ko nga nakinabangan eh. So, dito lang ako. Ano lang kasi kung wala pa akong kasama or pamangkin, hindi ako mag-stay doon. Diba, okay lang dito sa labasan. Naantay ko nga yung pamangkin ko na na makita ko. Pero wala man. Mahirap yun, manirahan ako. Ako lang nakita. So, anong nangyari sa akin?
Mas gustuin mo na lang po na dito sa labas.
Okay lang kung madisgrasya ako sa labas na at least may nakakita naman kahit pa.
She would rather sleep outside, where strangers can see her, hear her, help her, than be locked away in a silence and isolation. Nanay Ling De Ala has a family, but only in the social sense. She once believed she had siblings, people she worked with and lived alongside. Later, she began to doubt if they were truly blood relatives.
Yung kamag-anak ko, hindi na kami nagkita-kita. Tinuring kong kamag-anak sa Bagong Silang kasi nagsundo sa akin na masukan din ako sa may UST Streets sa SANTO. Ngayon, nagdududa ako na hindi ko kapatid kasi ibang shape ng kanya. Maliit ang binti, iba. Oo. Kaya, pero ganun pa naman, tinuring ko silang kapatid o pamangkin.
She chose not to live with them anymore, afraid of hearing painful words that might remind her she didn't fully belong. She preferred distance over emotional burden.
Mahirap kasi doon ka mag-stay, lalo na sa kapansanan ko. May marinig ka na salita, siyempre, sa loob-loob mo, maano ka lang, magka-countdown ka lang ng sama ng loob sa halip na okay kayo, kahit pa paano.
Despite these hardships, her spirit remained adventurous. She describes herself as active and free-spirited since childhood, traits that she carried into old age. And in a twist of fate, luck visited again. She won a small lottery prize from PCSO, 4 matching digits. But even that fortune slipped away. A delivery service meant to bring her the cash prize and gave the money to the wrong person, someone they encountered en route. She never saw a single peso.
Sa PCSO, ang PCSO ko kasi 4 digits panalo. Namasukan ako. May nasalubong ako, pwede pa kiabot lang. Pinento niya.
She had dreams for that money. As a breadwinner, she hoped to use it finally to change her life, even just a little.
Ang nangyari, kasi ako, the dreamer ako eh. Baga natawag ng wish upon the star. Pinag-wish ko na manalo ako na, siyempre makabili ng bahay. Ang ginawa kasi ng minintorya.
But still, she doesn't long for extravagance. She dreams for a peaceful space, somewhere quiet, where she can breathe freely and feel emotionally at ease.
Ano lang be, kung okay lang ba sa bahay na wala magaan sa loob ang pagbigay. Saka ayaw ko rin nga manilahan ako na magulo. Namasukan ako pag nalaman ko magulo, may asawa ng iba, ayaw ko. Lumalabas ako, maghanap ako ng...
She often gets misunderstood, accused of claiming spaces she never intended to own. But all she wants is calm. She works for years, even without supervision, proving her dedication despite everything. At the end of it all, Nanay Lindayao puts her hope in prayer. For her, it is faith, not circumstance, that sustains her.
Alam mo, Ben, mayroon naman nag-aabot ng tulong na kahit kunti sa araw na yan, sapat na sa araw na yan, bukas, iba naman. Minsan, ang bigay na araw ngayon, pwede pa sa sunod ng ibang araw. Kung wala, di wala. Ganun lang ako. Kaya nanalangin lang ako na Lord na lang ang bahala. Kung wala ako anong magagawa ko? Diba?
Like others we've met, she continues to ask, not for pity, but for dignity, and for a fair systems that listens.
In the quiet corners of España, the crowded edges of Lacson, and the restless rhythms of Noval, we listen. Not just stories of struggle, but stories of strength. From Nanay Bet, whose body grows weaker by the day, but whose will to survive remains unshaken. To Tatay Ray, who cannot speak, but whose eyes told us of a life spent wandering, surviving, enduring. To Tatay Rogelio, whose world collapsed in a single moment, yet who continues to pick up the pieces one scrap at a time. To Ate Margarita, whose family of 7 now finds shelter inside a tricycle, proof that love adapts when space runs out. And to Nanay Lindayao,
who once held the keys to a house but chose the sidewalk instead. Because loneliness, she said, is far colder than the street. These voices carry a truth that statistics often miss. That home is not always four walls. It can be a sidewalk, a corner, a place where someone recognizes your name. It can be routine, survival, and even prayer. And while their lives unfold in the margins, their humanity stands at the center. What they need is not just help, but understanding. Not just shelter, but belonging. In every conversation, we heard a quiet call. Not just for food or aid, but for visibility, fairness, and dignity. And in their stories, we found a powerful reminder that every person, no matter how displaced, is still part of the city, still part of us.
After the interviews ended, what remained were the echoes, brief answers, long pauses, and the weight of everyday survival. From these voices, patterns emerge. Not just stories, but truth. And in those truths, we began to see what life on the streets really reveals. Some settled in certain corners not by chance, but by choice. Near feeding stations, near people, near movement. Because these places offered something critical: access. In a city too crowded and too costly, they claimed spaces where they could.
Home for them is not a roof. It's a feeling. Safety, quiet, even just the comfort of being seen. It's less about shelter, more about peace. Work never stopped, from collecting a scrap to finding ways to earn. Each day is shaped by motion and survival. The streets are not idle. They're full of quiet industry.
But across every voice was one thing missing: support. Many spoke of never receiving help, never being approached, never being asked what they needed. The silence of institutions was louder than any promise.
One truth stood out. Some fear solitude more than the street. To be alone in a house felt more dangerous than to sleep under open skies. Being surrounded, even by strangers, offered more security than isolation ever could. There were moments of luck, housing, a lottery win, a kind stranger. But hope is fragile when systems don't hold it up. What they wanted was never luxury, just a quiet space, a soft bed, and a life with less fear.
In the end, our research is not just about homelessness, it's about humanity.
It is about recognizing that home is not just a structure. It is a story, a practice, a sense of belonging that people carry, even when everything else is taken away.
Through quiet resilience and unspoken hope, each voice revealed what it truly means to live without house, yet still search for a home.
This is Tahanan sa Lansangan, understanding the lives of the homeless in UST Streets, Manila. And in these lives, we are reminded, home is not always something you enter. It is something many are still fighting to find.